Good evening, St. Francis, and good evening, people of God. It is Sunday, the first day of January of the year 2023. Happy New Year on this octave day of the Christmas season of Christmas week. It is the 8th day of Christmas. It is also the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, a solemnity that is sort of recent in the Church's calendar. Previously, before the Second Vatican Council, this was celebrated as the circumcision of Jesus, which would have happened after the 8th day of birth, according to the Mosaic law. But we decided that it was perhaps more significant to celebrate Mary, and again, the accomplishment of her great yes to participate in God's plan to turn the corner of human history and to initiate the great work of salvation, which was God's plan all along. And so we honor Mary, and we honor Mary today and her role, again, in bringing forth the Savior, of saying yes without really asking many questions, except the question of how quickly can this be done and how much could she participate in it. Again, that question that is of determination as opposed to doubt and confusion, as it was with Zechariah. So on this New Year's Day, we celebrate Mary again as the human dimension within all that God does, and the importance of the human dimension within all God does, as being the image and reflection of who God is in God's self to begin with, our humanity. And so what a glorious way to conclude this first week of Christmas. We still have 8 more days of Christmas to be celebrated in January. Remember, Christmas will not end this year until Monday, January the 9th. And so good thing to continue to celebrate all this week and then into next weekend. Standing in front of a hutch that, if you can look closely, it has a nativity scene within it, as well as some other colored lights. So this is late afternoon, very late afternoon, almost evening. Nobody will probably see this until tomorrow, if at all. But if they do, it is New Year's Day evening, and it's because there was a lot of masses, a lot to do today. Unfortunately, I did not get up quickly enough time to do this in the proper hour that I usually do this at. Today's readings are always the same every year for Mary, the Mother of God. The first reading from the book of Numbers, always, which gives the great blessing that God tells Moses and Aaron to give to the Israelites, which becomes the great Franciscan blessing, because Francis sort of adopted it to himself, and nobody ever said he couldn't. So that's ours. But again, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord bless you and give you his peace. And God says to Moses and Aaron that this is to be the blessing. This is to be the way that Israelite comes to know who and what God is. Not a God of judgment, not a God of manipulation, not a God who needs to be wined and dined, who needs to be treated with kid gloves, a God who needs to be appeased, a God who needs to be coddled in many ways, as were many of the ancient gods and goddesses, but a God who first and foremost gives blessing and constantly gives blessing without merit, without deserving it, without any kind of preconditions, without any kind of work that needs to be done to achieve it or anything else like that. Ours is a God of blessing. And that, again, has been consistent, all with what Advent has pointed us to in the birth of the Savior, and really what then the Gospels will show us Christ is about as our Savior. Not somebody who comes to judge, not somebody who comes to condemn, not someone who comes to level punishments against humanity. That is the whole first chapter of the Gospel of John, reemphasizing that this is why the Messiah comes, is to give blessing, to give peace, to help us recognize something about ourselves that we alone cannot recognize. The letter to the Galatians, the second reading, has that great line about freeing us from the law, freeing us from the bondage of law, and what causes us to sin, perhaps because we are so bound to law most times that we forget the truth of what it means to be human and the truth of why we have been created. Again, laws are something that we create in many ways. Yes, there are 10 commandments, but those commandments do not capture everything that needs to be experienced as human beings. The gospel shows us that in many ways, and the gospel does not show us that necessarily by law. The gospel shows us that by way of encouragement, by way of gaining the courage and the wisdom to be able to live without fear, to be able to live the truth of who and what we are. And so Christ comes to free us from all these human-made constructions, all these human-made limitations, which even in our church can in many ways bind us and suppress us and burden us in ways that God never intended. And then there is the gospel, which is really the gospel for Mass at dawn on Christmas Day, in which the shepherds go to see this great thing the angels have told them to go and see, about a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. And they go out from there rejoicing about everything that it is that they have seen and experienced. And the idea is that Mary begins to reflect upon all of this. This is just the beginning of her reflection. It will become a life of reflection, and a life sometimes in which that reflection is met with difficulties and challenges, but a life hopefully that ends, or that does end, in a life of reflecting upon wonder and glory and beauty, and trust and love and forgiveness. In many ways, that is how we are to live our lives as believers, is to constantly reflect upon what it means to believe in this world, to constantly reflect upon what it is that are the challenges we face as believers, and how it is that God helps us to navigate through those challenges, and maybe even lifts the burdens that sometimes those challenges can create in our lives. That is what we are called to do, and what we are called to witness to in this world. It is a very good reading to use as we begin a new civil year of 2023. Remember, we've already begun a new year of faith at the beginning of Advent, but now we begin a new civil year, and may that year always be filled with reflecting and pondering upon all the wonder and the beauty that God demonstrates and shows to us in our lives. A continued blessed Easter, St. Francis and people of God, a blessed new 2023, the year of 2023 for all of you. May the Lord give you his peace.